And figuring out the money is the hardest part, especially when you don't care about the money. I don't care about the money, but you obviously need money to be able to provide the space that people can feel like your food has basically that backdrop where you can give everyone that experience. And also buy all the ingredients that you want to afford. For me, like, we spent so much money last year on all of our ingredients, and I'm happy. I don't feel weird about sharing this. We made almost $1 million in our first year, just our gross sales, and our profit was $50K, which is really amazing to be a profitable restaurant in our first year, and I feel really proud of us for doing that. I'm just like, it was a harrowing experience in every way. Opening a restaurant is not for the faint-hearted. You have to be really tough with everything that goes along with that, but it's one of the best experiences ever. I was just texting a friend of mine who I didn't go to culinary school with, but I was cooking alongside when we were both in culinary school. His name is Neng Jr. He's opening a restaurant in Pittsburgh. It's called Fisk. It's going to be a Nordic restaurant. But he always teased me while I was in culinary school because I was in culinary school, and a lot of cooks are going to tease you guys for being in culinary school. But for me, the reason why I went was because of how much structure I needed in my life, and I needed that discipline, and that discipline is really an exchange of respect that you can end up bringing with you to your workplace. And for me, I never really understood. I had a hard time, and I continue to have a hard time with authority in this way, where you address people in a certain way. I also have a military background with my parents, well, with my dad. My dad was a Marine, and I ended up challenging his authority so much that I was a very rebellious person. And in that rebellion, I was really doing what I wanted to do all the time. And then I knew eventually that would lead me to face my own issues in the mirror and figure out what I wanted to do in life. And one of those things was I ended up living in Portland as a teenager, and as I was turning 21, I moved to Asheville. And when I moved to Asheville, I was sleeping at a friend's house and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And what I almost always did, regardless of any time or point in my life, was cooking meals for my friends. And they were like, "You should be a chef." All my friends were always telling me, "You would be a great chef." And I just never took that seriously, but I always had this agony over wanting to try it out. I actually ended up going to AV Tech to do AutoCAD classes, and I was really wanting to get into drafting and architecture and designing, and that is something that comes up a lot actually with restaurants, and those spaces actually do apply, and it is nice to have taken those classes, honestly. But I realize I'm a person that can't really sit at a desk, and I really like to express myself. And so I decided to go to culinary school, even though there are so many things I'd heard about it. Nothing bad, I just heard that it was hard. And I heard that there was a 70% dropout rate, which is still, I'm not sure if that's still true. It's just because it's a very difficult program, and we're cooking food, and I'm sure a lot of you have jobs outside of this, and you're just trying to keep up, and it's a lot of hours. And I can't remember who exactly was saying this. I think it was someone, a teacher in the hospitality part, but he was saying, don't be in this business if you're not serious about being in this business, because you will be miserable if you have any inkling or idea of your misery now. And I felt like that was a really hard thing for me to hear. I was working 3 jobs, and I was in culinary school, and I was really into culinary school. It was really hard, and I thought a lot of it was silly, and I think some of the structure was silly for me, but I also, at the end of the day, I went through so many things after culinary school, but ultimately, the structure of the respect that it gives you when you say chef to someone. I never thought I would be a person that would open a restaurant and ask my cooks to call me chef. And I realized that it really sets the tone of where you are and where you are in the workplace. And now I think about, my dad actually passed away 6 months into the restaurant. So I opened the restaurant, and I knew he would pass away maybe in those next 2 years. He had been sick for 7, but he had passed away in 6 months of the restaurant, which is just a crazy timeline thing when I zoom out and look back at that. But then I think about all of the times where he was really disciplined. He gave me so much discipline to as simple as making my bed a certain way and folding the sheets a certain way, and I always thought that was so silly. But I think one important thing for everyone to know about like recognition and success, and we had an amazing successful year, and that didn't go without so much time of struggle and so many days of doing things where nobody saw what work I was doing. And there's just a level of work as a chef, and as like a chef, you're an artist or you're a craftsperson. I see myself as both because I feel like I'm on this journey of mastery where I probably will do this for the rest of my life, and I will do this for the rest of my life. And thinking about all of those ways in my everyday life to apply how my practice could get better is so important to me. So has anyone been to the restaurant here? So it's in this large building, and this building used to be a venue called the Moth Light. And if you were to go to the bathrooms when you're at a show at the Moth Light, you would walk through the center of this building, and then the center of the building was actually like kind of like a chill zone where you had like dirty couches and like some like arcade games, and then there was like a closet that I never knew existed. And when the pandemic happened, I was actually working in the Cayman Islands. I came back and was shown this space, and I didn't know what its future really held for me because it just was a closet. I was shown this tiny closet space, and I was like, there's no way. There was a quick serve window, and I was like, maybe I'll do something because I can do to-go food with the quick serve window. And then I just decided it would be my first restaurant. When I first like initially thought of myself in this space, I was like, I'll just do like something fast casual. You know, but the thing about like good food here and something fast casual is there's just already a line around the block, and there's this anxious quality to waiting for your food that I didn't want to have, and I didn't want to put that on myself, and I didn't want to put that on my staff. And I've worked at many restaurants where there were no reservations, and that brings a level of anger to customers if they even can't get in, and there's just like this probability of not being able to make it where people are willing to take that chance by waiting in line. But I didn't want to have a line around the block, and as much as I wish I could have the option of having walk-ins only and reservation, like we only have 18 seats in the restaurant. We're open from 5:30 to 10. We do 3 full turns. We never do more than 54 covers a night, and with that planning, there's so much more you can do with your food. To know, and also the other thing was that I wanted to do a fixed menu. I had eaten at a couple restaurants. One of Sean Brock's restaurant, the Continental in Nashville, was like just such a lovely experience, and it was set. It was $120, and everything was just an amazing experience, and that's what I want to experience going out to eat. But also, it's tough because I really wanted to make it accessible, but that price point's really high when everyone has to pay. It feels like they have to pay that amount. You have to give your customers, I think, this is just my opinion, especially as a new chef in restaurants. I don't consider myself a new chef just cooking, but like as a person that is in charge of like my mission, my vision, I think you should try to make things as accessible as possible and give people the choice. And not having those options, people feel iced out already or intimidated. But I'm not trying to like create any intimidation. I want to be able to make sure I can afford the food that I want to buy and work with, and also pay my employees well. Like we pay everyone $20 an hour, and everybody splits tips, everyone, front and back equally, which goes upwards to like, can go upwards to like 45 to 50 an hour as we average out stuff. And the pricing of our menu also reflects that too. And there is a way to, I think that if you start off that way and just stick with it, people can also be convinced of what you need to do and what you're trying to do. And not everyone is going to agree with you, but you can't make everyone happy. Like as much as you want to, as much as you're like on your knees, like I'm sorry, like I really wish that I could figure out a way for you. You cannot, you just can't do it to yourself like that. And that's something I struggle with all the time. Does that feel like it answered your question?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. Yes.
This is kind of a personal question, but like how was it emotionally
good question. I will also add another level to that, is that Cherry and I just got married in June, and our soft opening was a month later. And I would have never done it that way.
It was a week later.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it was a week later.
We got married and then we soft opened 1 week later.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a nice honeymoon.
Well, we did have a really nice honeymoon 1 year later. But it's just financially the way things pan out, especially so when I signed the lease, and I also was extremely naive. Like, I didn't know what all of these equations could lead to, basically. Like, when you sign a lease and you don't have a built-out kitchen, like, you should protect yourself and have a broker or a lawyer help you with your lease negotiation, so you can have money that isn't your own money, basically have that landlord help you with this build out, or there's some sort of conversation about when you start paying rent, because you're not running that business yet, because your tenancy can add value to that building that you do not own. Like, you as an individual can be an asset to this building that you're walking into. It's really important to know that. I had no idea that that was something that could be a thing that mattered to me. I know that now. So basically, they had shut down this building, and then I was suddenly in this building, but they were looking for like a quick like transaction swap of just like tenants paying rent. That's not the case. We did a full build out, and I'm not grateful that so much hardship happened with the pandemic and that we're still like currently dealing with COVID positive and sickness and all of those evolutions of that. But I will say, because of the uprisings in June of 2020, it really put the industry under a microscope of all of the things that have been really toxic about our industry that we love and we want to be in, but things that just can't be sustainable for forever. They really can't. And also, we are professionals and we should be looked at as professionals. And as students in culinary school, like, you have a dedication to this craft. And it's important for people to know that. And not everyone will treat you like that, but I do think it is important for you to remember that as an individual that is like dedicated to the education of yourself, of this mastery of cooking. And it's also something where, yes, like you said earlier, where you have this like passion and you want to make people happy with this plate of food, and this plate of food it's the more visceral experience than like most anything, because it enters your body. And people at my restaurant specifically, and I think this adds to like your question about like dealing with death, is like, I spend so much time in this space, like kind of not knowing so much about the legality and of that process, but knowing how I wanted my I knew everything of what I wanted my space to be, and I knew what I wanted it to feel like. And I was so emotional in it, and I was really in my space so much, and I felt like the space just like breathes everything I went through. And a lot of people cry when they eat my food, and like, that's weird in some ways to me. Like I don't think of it as a bad thing, but it's a very that's an experience, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a gift, and there is no convenient time for death. And I always told myself I would take a month off when my dad died, and we had already planned this like kind of 2-week or 3-week break after Christmas, after the holidays. And he ended up getting really sick, and then during that time period we had already allotted for the restaurant to be closed. I was just with him when he passed away, basically, and I didn't have any more time. I didn't have any money to really like continue to pause the restaurant. And also I wanted to take my mind off of it, and I was just like, and it's still like my happy place, where just being in the kitchen in the morning and seeing the daylight like hit the table, like it's a special feeling. And especially when it's something that you've worked really hard to create. And it was a really hard experience. But I felt like I had all of these people entering my life like at the right moments. And it's like that thing where it's like, if you're, I don't want to even compare it to this because it's really not like this, but like if you go through a breakup and like every song feels like it's about your breakup, you know, it kind of felt like, that's kind of how it feels when you open a restaurant. You're going through so much shit. Like, you're thinking about the ways that you want to make people happy, and you're thinking about like, my cook was just like not okay last night. Like, what's going on with them? Like, how can I support them? and also like, oh, my communication with my GM last night was not great. And how do we fix all of these things? Because you just want to, I think genuinely, like, especially like if you really mean it, if you really are trying to make people happy, like you're trying to make your coworkers happy too, and you want to facilitate a space where it isn't toxic. And that, I think there are like so many things that are part of just like old industry things that are really important to the way that things were structured and should be cherished and respected. And I have a lot of respect for French classical and traditional cuisines, but all different types of cuisines are at the same level, nothing is less. And when I was kind of talking about how I had a lot of feelings about culinary school after culinary school was just having something that was like the rubric, which is like French classical, but I think it's like an easy rubric to follow because there's so many details. There's so much documentation with that. But I ended up, and I don't do this, I threw away my petite sheets, and I'm very upset that I did. And I wish I hadn't, because a reference is super important, and I constantly reference all of my like collection of cookbooks. But because I just was like, oh, like, you know, why couldn't I learn about my cuisine or Filipino cuisine in a serious way like this? And like, if that doesn't exist, like we have to create those things. And that's kind of how I feel about my restaurant, where, you know, I wanted to leave Asheville for a long time, but I thought it was really important to create the restaurant that I needed to see here because I love it here, and I didn't want it to force me out of a place that I love. The restaurant itself kind of started out with what, like 4 of us?
Yeah.
4 of us, just like a really small staff, just like it was a crazy experience opening, but I've been also wanting to evolve into this space because I think of this as such a profession and I respect it so much, and like a lot of what I never experienced was kind of just having these benefits where we feel taken care of. I actually have a pregnant employee that's out, and I don't have this backing to give her that maternity leave that she deserves. So I've been kind of thinking about like, how do I give her that money that she needs, you know, but it actually like be part of my business plan.
Hi, buddy.
Yeah, I think so many different walks of life come to our restaurant, and I think that's the best thing at the restaurant, honestly. I think that there are people that like see us for who we are and feel like it's a space for them, and I see people that really like enter the restaurant wanting to eat good food, and it's also for them too. And I think, no, that's been one of the best things of the restaurant is like, and I don't ever want to just make sure there's one type of person that's coming to eat our food. Like, to me, that would feel like, I don't want to say the F word, failure. But that to me, I'm just like, I like always want to make things as accessible as possible, and sometimes like that accessibility comes out in a price point that prices people out, and to me that's like the hardest thing for me because things cost money and they're expensive, and we also want to create a level of food that makes me feel good and feels good to serve. Yeah. Yes.
As a new restaurant, you've been open for like 2 years. Did you plan to win the James Beard nomination, stuff like that have come up? And if you haven't, what was your reaction when you got that nomination?
I have that reaction because that nomination happened the day I signed my dad's death certificate. So it was very mixed emotions because I've been anticipating this accolade like my entire cooking career. I was very looking forward to this. I wasn't expecting the nomination, and I was like, we could win this, and I took it really seriously. And you get a nomination, and then you have, 3 months until you are announced as a finalist or not, and then you go to Chicago and you go to the awards and figure out if you won or not. We were pretty damn close, and I'm just happy that we got nominated, because being nominated is basically like winning, honestly. And it is, and like we didn't expect to have such an enormously successful first year. And I will say, people ask me about those accolades, and I always think I'm happy to have them, and I do think a lot of them were just a long time coming because I've been doing this for 13 plus years. It's nice to have them, but don't rely on them. Absolutely not. I was born in Paris Island, which is a military base in South Carolina. I also grew up in Apex, North Carolina, which is like, was super rural. You know where that is? Okay, nice. It's changed a lot. You know, it's really suburban now. It's not where the place I grew up really, but it was very country in that way. And I grew up basically between Apex, North Carolina and Eastern North Carolina, where my grandparents lived. So we would go on these kind of 2-hour road trips quite often, and there was always like barbecue stops along the way. So I'm very much like a meat in 3 fan and cafeteria food fan in that way, just like really hearty sides. And honestly, just Southern food and barbecue are just huge passions of mine. Also, I was privileged enough to have this experience of my life with my mom being from the Philippines and the majority of my Filipino family living in the Philippines. We would go there with like 5-year intervals and experience the food there. And a lot of Southern food and Filipino food is really similar. There's lechon, which is Filipino roasted pig, and there's, you know, Eastern North Carolina barbecue. It's almost the same dish, and like that just was mind-blowing to me, especially when I was just getting into just like correlations and similarities and overlapping where I come from like physically to like where I come from generationally, and that was super meaningful for me. And I think like when y'all think about what your food is, thinking about where you come from is a really easy way to just love the food that you're putting out and to study that, because it's just part of every fiber of who you are. When I think about food, or my approach to what's on the menu at Neng's, at least in this restaurant, I just apply pretty much all of my experiences from working, whether I was working, I don't want to bring up this one, Bob, never mind. I started washing dishes at a Japanese restaurant, and this is where I kind of started getting into food, and I would have to peel carrots and peel carrots and peel shrimp, and that's like basically all I did, and cut onions, and it really like, it wasn't my favorite experience, but it really just was enough for me to want to move forward and take it really seriously. And I think about my experiences in other kitchens constantly. I'm thinking about like how we would do shrimp tempura, how I would like unpeel the shrimp and then like spread out the shrimp and like cut the belly of it, all of those things. And I think about, when I'm thinking about food, I'm thinking about all these experiences, and I have things that stick out, and then I'll go to the market, see what's in season, pick out like the things that I think are the most beautiful and exciting, and then I'll try to apply all of these things to whatever I'm reading. I'm like constantly reading recipe books and referencing. That really helps me a lot. And I've always, if you have the opportunity to take yourself out of your comfort zone and like do something different in stage, like you should. I think the more places and more kitchens that you see when you're going to a place, watch how they cook, you know, like it's really interesting to see how people set up their kitchens. And one of the biggest challenges you'll face is when your managers is figuring it out, it's constantly being able to problem solve, and that problem solving applies to everything, and it applies to the way you see your menu too, and the ways that if you have excess product, and how can you not waste this, and how you can use it in the dead of winter when you're just sick of root vegetables and you want to pull out something that you did make, and it isn't just like something that you're buying, like it's not just a product that's already made that you're buying from someone else. Like you should just like work your hardest to make all of those things in-house. It's not possible for everything, but you have to figure out the things that you're the most excited about, and some of the things that you're most excited about are just like the most simple memory that you had when you were just like, you know, getting out of a swimming pool and eating like a cold sandwich. You know, it's like all of those like different memories that actually can formulate like a really gorgeous, simple dish. And definitely going as simple as possible is something that I learned too. I was a person, I feel like if I looked at like my first menus of like first pop-ups, like I don't even want to like embarrass myself saying like what the dishes were, but you know, you just put out so many different things, and then I think as you evolve, you learn more about yourself and how you want to like present yourself, and it becomes more refined and confident, and you put a lot less on the plate, but the ingredients that you do put on there can say all that you need to say. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So I have a question, actually. So I actually lost my sister at the beginning of culinary school, and I feel it's crazy. Just I've had a lot of epiphanies recently, especially finishing up a capstone, and just a lot of reflections. And it seems like the way you describe how you went about your restaurant and all the things that you went through, I feel like I can relate to. And really, my question is, what kept you going? Because that's definitely not anything easy at all. And
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you lost your sister. It's like loss, really. And I don't know, honestly, Cherry and I were hanging out with a friend of ours that lost her mom about a month ago, and this trails off into that kind of topic of loss. And loss really takes you to a place very quickly, and you accelerate, and your growth accelerates in a way where it could feel isolating because you're maturing and you're seeing the world in a different way, and you're also, everyone deals with grief very differently. When I was dealing with my grief, it was really difficult because I had a little bit of role reversal with my mom, where I was kind of taking care of her and her loss, and that felt like another thing that I was taking on, and that was really difficult because I'm like, I need my mom too. I think what kept me going was the restaurant in a lot of ways, and my team, I knew that they needed me and I needed them, and I had this really amazing opportunity to not give up. I think the easiest thing to do sometimes is give up, where you're just like, I cannot do this anymore. This is so difficult. Don't do that. Don't give up. It's the worst thing that you could do for yourself.
Because what if you win, right?
What if you win? And also, it's not really about winning though. Like, the part that you win is completing the day. It's like, for me, I didn't want to work service like Friday night last week, and I was just like, I was just so sensitive, feeling so many different emotions. Like, can I take this on? And letting my mind kind of trail off and just spiral into all of these thoughts that are the issues of this restaurant, which everyone has a long laundry list of issues, and then you have to step out of that space. You have to work hard to step out of that space and find this. And a lot of it is like creating your own environment. If you don't have that like thing to fall back into that takes you out of that space, like, you have to work on building whatever that is for you. The restaurant really is what kept me going, honestly. And there are times when if I feel like I cannot continue, I really seek inspiration. I know, like, whatever is around me or what I've been doing hasn't been serving me in the way that I feel like it has in the past. I think that's when you also have to like listen to that acceleration and then push yourself to the next step or take yourself to the next level, because whatever level you're at is not serving you anymore. I actually started watching The Bear, and I never watched The Bear. Well, I watched the first season, and it was really hectic, and it was really difficult for me to watch because it's a stressful show. It's so stressful. And it's like work. You're like, I want to get away from this. I actually should just be watching, like some bad reality TV or whatever. But as I got into the second season, it felt, and also, and it wasn't because they won a bunch of Emmys or anything like that, but I did see someone say, like, and I think it was David Silver, who said, thankful that somebody could see that this industry was worth highlighting and making a show out of, so we can share our stories. Because I do think, like, there's something about people and folks that work in the hospitality industry that are just, they're a different kind of person, and I love that person. And there's this like intimacy that happens that when you find the right people and you build the right team in a kitchen, it's like this thing where if you're in a fight with somebody and you're going on a walk, it's easier to address an issue when you're kind of just not having to look them in the eye, and it's easier to get really close really fast because you're just walking beside each other, or you're in the car, you're driving, and you're just like kind of just getting into it. I feel like this about cooking because we're beside each other, or whoever your coworkers are, and whether they're your favorite or your least favorite, you get to know so much about them because you spend 8 hours with them at a prep table, and you don't have to look each other in the eye, and you're getting to this level where it's just like, it's so romantic in this way. Like, we can be there for each other in this way, and we can learn about each other in this way. And I felt like the Bear did a really good job showing that, and I was like, oh, this is so inspiring. Let me not give up, like let me remember that the relationships that I cultivated here, we're all just like going through a moment together. There's a point where your team gets so connected that when you're down, like it feels like you're all down, and you're like, oh no, like I gotta bring them up somehow, and then you have to try a lot harder, especially in a leadership position, because they're looking to you for guidance, and they're there for you in a lot of ways, and that's a hard thing sometimes. But I feel like for me, I always seek inspiration, whether it's just a really old book, a new book, or just like a current TV show. That always helps me. And one thing I'm really excited about is that Cherry and I are actually going to Copenhagen at the end of this month, and I'm gonna work at Noma for 2 days, and I'm so excited.
Whoa.
And there's that piece where you just don't stop learning, and like that's so important. Like it's so important to keep doing that. And if you haven't staged at a restaurant yet, like please do that and start getting all of these things on your resume, because you just get to learn, and not just learning about the ways these kitchens are set up. You learn about how people run their spaces, and then you figure out what space that you want to create for yourself. And that to me is like a lot of what Neng's is.
And I also like the idea of the hour and a half table time.
Yes.
And I thought that was really interesting, because we've talked about that, and how do you turn your tables and how do you flip them. But those are things that are problematic in a restaurant and can make or break you. Is how do you turn if you got 18 tables, how do you turn those tables enough times in the night to make it work?
I have a clock in my mind where I see, basically also our style of service, since none of y'all have gone there, is that we have a menu that is very vague, and what do we call it? The spiel?
Everyone has a different thing, but I'd say specially.
Yeah, especially all of our servers special the menu, which is they basically poetically describe what the menu is. And it's typically like a 10 to 11 item menu. And a lot of that approach with that is because Filipino food is not familiar to most, and there would be questions anyway. I'm like, let's just tell them what it is, But we do the specialty piece, and then I have this clock in my mind once the ticket rolls in. And also before we even have our customers come in, we do a lineup every day at 5 o'clock, and we go through what our service looks like. And we write what our times are, how many people are eating at what time, and also if they're sitting at the floor, if they're sitting at the bar. And that way I can know, and I'm right there, I can see what's happening, and we usually, between me and the host, we're just talking constantly. And there are people that like to camp. We just try to make sure they're getting their entree like right before they have 30 more minutes to eat, so they can get their dessert and wrap up. That's how I see it in my mind. And if we have a tight turn, we our host lets us know in the kitchen, and then we try to get our food out a little bit faster. And if people camp, we just try pretty anxiously to be like, ooh, like what should we do? Like we basically wait for them to take their time, and if it takes more than 15 minutes, we'll probably we end up saying something if it feels, but most of the time they end up getting up. And I tried my hardest to not say anything until there is that moment, but it feels tough, because that's one of the toughest parts about the restaurant, because it's small. And when I made a reservation at a restaurant in Nashville called Locust, I made the reservation, and there was like an immediate notification, you have an hour and 30 minutes to eat. And I was like, the whole time I was eating, and I don't want people to feel that way, and it doesn't give you that notification when you eat at Neng's, but it's nice. I think it's nice for the information to be out there, but it's tough. That part is a tough piece, and tough for people to understand, I think. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think the purpose of putting that information for people too is sort of like, it's really important in this industry to have more clarity and directness with the person that you're taking care of, and it creates a level of respect between the diner and the person who is working in service. And ultimately, we need the 3 turns on every seat in order for the business to be sustainable and functional. And if a person wants to continue to eat at the restaurant, and for us to be there next week or next year or 10 years from now, then they should understand that that's just what we need to accomplish. And be our ally in that need, and also don't center yourself in the experience. You're not the only person dining in that seat tonight, and what I don't have a problem telling people, like, I'm so sorry, but the next guests that are coming into your seats are here. Would you mind moving on? You know, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Be clear with people. Do it with kindness. Do it with respect. Clarity and kindness are the most respectful things that you can offer any person. And people who really support your mission, they'll understand. And if they don't, that's okay too. You know, you don't have to come back.
They can go to a place where they don't have to feel that pressure, but that's just sincerely how this restaurant works.
Yeah. But we'll always set people up for success. And
Yeah, we
it
try our
starts
hardest.
with sitting in the seat and, you know, going right ahead and diving into that menu and giving them an explanation for the night and what they can expect, and having high frequency of communication with every single person on the team, whether it's the host, the server, the manager on duty, the chef who's expoing, and also the 2 cooks that are on the line as well.